I've stayed in a lot of hotels during my life, but none of them left a mark on me the way the Skirvin Hotel in Oklahoma City did. At first glance, it's just another beautiful old luxury hotel, the kind of place dripping with history, the kind of place that makes you feel like you've stepped back in time. But sometimes history doesn't stay in the past. Sometimes, it lingers in the walls, in the air, in the very silence that settles over a building when the lights dim. That's what I found out the night I met Effie. It was last fall when I booked the Skirvin. I had a business trip that forced me to stay downtown, and the Skirvin came up as the most convenient option. I'd heard rumors before, whispers about hauntings, strange stories about a woman's ghost roaming the halls, but I didn't put much weight into them. Hotels love legends. They make for good storytelling, a good selling point. That's what I told myself when I checked in. The lobby was grand, with high ceilings and chandeliers that looked like they belonged in a movie set. Everything smelled faintly of old wood and polished brass. I got my keycard, rode up to the 10th floor, and stepped into a hallway that was strangely quiet. Not empty, just quiet, like the air itself was heavy. My room looked ordinary enough. King bed, thick curtains, a desk, and a bathroom that had seen more renovations than the rest of the building. I remember laughing to myself as I tossed my bag on the bed. "So this is where the famous ghost lives," I muttered. The words hung in the air longer than they should have, like I'd spoken them into someone else's presence. That first night, nothing much happened except for one detail I brushed off at the time. Around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of a woman crying. It wasn't faint, it was clear, sharp, a kind of sobbing that cut through the silence of the room. I sat up, heart racing, and listened. The sound seemed to come from the bathroom. I flipped on the lamp, swung my legs over the side of the bed, and forced myself to walk to the door. The bathroom was empty. No running water, no open windows, nothing. But the crying had stopped the moment I touched the doorknob. My reflection in the mirror looked pale and shaken, and I laughed nervously at myself, muttering something about thin hotel walls and rowdy neighbors. But the strange thing was, when I asked the front desk the next morning, they told me no one was in the room next to mine that night. The second night, things escalated. I got back from dinner late, turned on the TV for background noise, and drifted off to sleep. Sometime past midnight, I woke with the strangest sensation. Someone was in the bed with me. The sheets felt weighted down on the other side like a body was pressing into the mattress. I froze. My mind fought to rationalize. Maybe I was imagining it, maybe the mattress had shifted. But then I felt it. A hand. Cold fingers brushing lightly across my chest. I leapt out of bed, nearly tripping over my own feet. The other side of the mattress was perfectly smooth, the sheets unwrinkled as though no one had ever touched them. My breathing was ragged, the room stifling. I flicked on every light, checked the door, it was locked, and spent the rest of the night sitting upright in the armchair with the TV blaring just to drown out the silence. By morning I was exhausted. I went downstairs, asked the front desk again if anyone had ever reported strange things in my room. The young woman behind the counter gave me a look I'll never forget, half knowing, half hesitant. She leaned in slightly and whispered, "You're on the 10th floor, aren't you? People say that's where she lingers. Her name's Effie." She went on to tell me the legend. Effie was a maid decades ago who was said to have had an affair with the hotel's founder. The story goes that he locked her in one of the rooms, pregnant and desperate, until she eventually threw herself and her child from a window. Whether the details were true or not, the staff all agreed. Her presence still haunted the building. That night, I told myself I'd sleep somewhere else. But stubborn curiosity kept me in that room. I wanted proof. I wanted to know I wasn't imagining things. So I set my phone on the desk, recording audio before I crawled into bed. At 2:47 a.m., I woke to the sound of humming. A lullaby, soft and broken, coming from right beside me. My eyes snapped open, and for a split second I saw her. Just a blur, a shadow of a woman with long dark hair standing by the window. The curtains swayed though the glass was shut tight. And then she was gone. The recording caught it all. The crying. The humming. And right before the audio cuts off, my own sharp intake of breath, you can hear something else. A whisper. So faint I didn't catch it until I played it back the next morning. A woman's voice, broken and hollow, saying, "Don't leave me." I checked out that morning and I haven't set foot in the Skirvin since. But the audio is still on my phone. Sometimes I play it back just to convince myself I didn't dream it all. But every time I hear that whisper, I know it wasn't a dream. Effie is real and she's still waiting in that old hotel room for someone who will never come back. This story was shared by someone. Dark whispers cannot verify if it's true. What we do is share stories given by people on platforms like Reddit. Thank you for your presence. Let's continue. I was on a little road trip through Arkansas, and the crescent caught my attention because it looked beautiful. An old Victorian-style building sitting up on a hill, surrounded by trees. From the outside it was almost romantic. Inside it was charming in that creaky, historic sort of way. You could feel the age of the place, the way the hallways seemed to go on forever, the way the carpet muffled your footsteps a little too much. The front desk clerk was friendly enough. When I mentioned I'd heard about the hotel's haunted reputation, she gave me this knowing smile and said, "Well, some people say they've met the nurse." I asked what she meant, but she just shrugged and told me to enjoy my stay. My room was on the 3rd floor. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and the furniture was old but polished. Nothing about it screamed haunted. But almost immediately I started noticing things that didn't add up. For one, the bathroom door wouldn't stay shut. I'd close it firmly, hear the latch click, and minutes later it would slowly creak back open. I blamed the old hinges, the slope of the floor, anything but the obvious. That first night I was brushing my teeth when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, like someone pacing back and forth. I figured it was another guest until I realized the sound never faded. It stayed right outside my door, back and forth, back and forth. I cracked the door open, but the hallway was empty. The second night is when it got serious. I had been tossing and turning, unable to sleep. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I finally rolled over to face the bathroom, and that's when I saw her. She was standing in the doorway. A woman, tall and thin, dressed in what looked like an old-fashioned nurse's uniform. Her cap was tilted slightly and her face wasn't quite right. It was pale, gaunt, and her eyes seemed sunken, shadowed in a way that didn't look natural. She wasn't solid either. Parts of her looked blurry, like I was seeing her through heat waves. I froze. My first instinct was to blink, to tell myself I was overtired. But she didn't vanish. She just stood there watching me. Then slowly she stepped into the room. The air grew colder with every step she took, until I could see my breath hanging in front of me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. She reached the edge of the bed and leaned over me. I swear I could smell something foul, like old antiseptic mixed with rot. Her hand lifted as though she was about to touch my chest. And then she was gone. Just like that. No sound, no fade out, gone. The room was empty, but the cold lingered. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I kept the lights on, sitting upright against the headboard like a child afraid of the dark. The next morning, I asked one of the housekeepers if anyone else had ever seen something like that. She hesitated, then nodded. "That's the nurse," she said. "She used to work here when this place was a hospital. They say she still checks on people at night." Apparently, during the 1930s, the Crescent Hotel wasn't a hotel at all. It was a fake cancer hospital run by a con man named Norman Baker. He hired women dressed as nurses to move patients around, many of whom died in those rooms. The woman I saw, they believe, is one of them. I cut my stay short and checked out that afternoon. To this day, I still remember her face, the way her eyes seemed to sink into mine, the way the cold wrapped around me like a sheet. Sometimes when I'm alone at night, I catch myself glancing at the doorway, half expecting to see her standing there again. I don't know if I believe in ghosts in the traditional sense, but I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And I know I will never, ever set foot inside the Crescent Hotel again. The Queen Mary is one of those places that you think you know before you ever set foot inside. Long Beach loves to talk about it, a retired ocean liner turned hotel, with a glamorous history full of Hollywood stars and transatlantic voyages. But right alongside the glitz and nostalgia, there's another reputation that clings to the ship like rust to its hull. People say the Queen Mary is haunted. People say the ship itself never truly stopped sailing, that it carries pieces of its past with it. I didn't plan to encounter any of that when I booked my room. I'd always been fascinated by the ship's history, and I figured staying overnight would just be a cool way to immerse myself in a piece of the past. I didn't realize I'd end up experiencing one of the strangest and most terrifying nights of my life. My room was on B deck. It was cozy but still carried that vintage feel, polished with brass fittings, portholes that didn't actually open but made you feel like you were at sea. Walking through the hallways was like stepping back in time. The carpets were thick, the ceilings low, and the air heavy, carrying that faint, briny smell of the harbor. The first odd thing happened while I was unpacking. I kept hearing footsteps outside my door. Not unusual, I told myself, except these weren't the heavy thuds of tourists in sneakers or the shuffle of staff. They were hard-soled, crisp, almost military in precision. I opened the door once, twice, 3 times and found no one there. Just an empty hallway stretching in both directions, quiet as the grave. Later that night, I joined one of the ship's ghost tours. The guide was animated, spinning tales about the engine room in cabin B340, supposedly one of the most haunted cabins on the ship. He told us about a sailor who'd been crushed to death by a watertight door during a drill, about children seen splashing in the empty swimming pool, about a woman in white who roams the decks. It was all fascinating, chilling in that safe campfire story way. But I told myself that was where the ghosts belonged, inside the stories, not in my reality. I went back to my room exhausted. I fell asleep quickly, lulled by the faint hum of the harbor outside. Then I woke at 3:15 a.m. At first, I thought it was just the sound of the ship settling, metal groaning with the tide. But then I heard it again, running water. The sound of splashing, faint laughter. My room didn't have a bathtub, just a shower, and it was dry as a bone. But the noise grew louder, clearer, until I could make out the distinct sound of children's voices, echoing like they were bouncing off tiled walls. My stomach dropped. The tour guide's words came back to me. The first-class pool, long since drained and closed to the public, was said to be one of the most haunted places on board. Countless people claimed they'd heard children laughing there, even though no one had swum in that pool in decades. I wanted to tell myself I was dreaming, but the sound was too real. I pressed my ear to the wall, and I swear I could feel the vibration of water sloshing, like it was happening just on the other side. Then came the knock. 3 sharp raps on my cabin door. I froze, my heart hammering. Slowly I got up, reached for the handle and opened it. No one. The hallway was empty, the lights buzzing faintly overhead. I stepped out, glanced both ways, and felt that creeping sensation that I wasn't alone. My skin prickled, and the air seemed heavier, colder. I shut the door quickly and locked it. I tried to calm down, but the night was far from over. At some point, I must have dozed off again because I woke to the sensation of someone standing over me. You know that feeling? You don't have to open your eyes to know you're being watched. When I finally forced them open, my breath caught in my throat. There was a man in my cabin. He was dressed in what looked like an old naval uniform, his cap pulled low, his face shadowed. He didn't move. He just stood there rigid at the foot of my bed. My instinct screamed to leap up, to run, but I couldn't move. I was pinned to the mattress, my body heavy, as though the very air had turned to lead. I blinked and he was gone. The paralysis lifted instantly and I sat up gasping, drenched in sweat. My room was empty again, silent except for the hum of the harbor. But I couldn't shake the image of his figure burned into my mind, the authority in his stance, the blankness of his face. By morning I felt half delirious. I went down to the reception desk and, against my better judgment, asked if anyone had ever reported seeing men in naval uniforms in the cabins. The clerk hesitated, then nodded slowly. "It happens," she said. "Some people say they're old crew members still checking on the ship." That should have been the end of it. I should have left it as a creepy coincidence. But later, while wandering the public decks, I passed a wall covered in black and white photos of the ship's crew from the 1940s. My eyes scanned the rows of uniforms, smiling faces frozen in time, until they landed on one figure. I stopped dead in my tracks. It was him. The same man who had stood at the foot of my bed, down to the tilt of his cap and the set of his jaw. He had a name tag in the photo: Walter J. Thompson, Chief Officer. I don't remember leaving the ship that morning. I just remember the overwhelming need to get off, to put distance between myself and whatever lingered there. But even now, years later, I sometimes dream of that night. The sound of laughter in the walls, the knock on the door, the weight of unseen eyes in the dark. The Queen Mary may not sail the seas anymore, but I believe it still carries its crew, its passengers, and its tragedies. Some ships are too full of memories to ever rest, and I will never forget the night I became part of its story. I've worked maintenance at the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel for years, and in that time, I've seen and heard more than I can explain. People check in for glamour, for history, for the chance to brush shoulders with the legends of old Hollywood. They don't always know the building itself is alive with something else. I learned that the hard way one night when I was assigned to the upper floors after midnight. That night started like any other. The hotel was quiet, with most guests tucked away in their rooms or out exploring Los Angeles nightlife. I had my toolkit slung over my shoulder, heading up to fix a faulty light fixture in one of the corner suites. The hallway was dim, lined with old photographs of stars who'd once stayed here. Their black and white eyes seemed to follow me as I walked, and though I'd been down those halls countless times, the silence felt heavier than usual. The Roosevelt has this way of shifting at night. During the day, it's bustling, alive, its golden chandeliers and polished marble radiating old Hollywood charm. But at night, everything changes. The shadows stretch longer, the air turns cold, and the echo of your own footsteps sounds wrong, like someone else is walking a beat behind you. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling. When I reached the suite, I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was stale, colder than the hallway, and I immediately noticed the faint smell of cigar smoke. That didn't make sense. No one is allowed to smoke in the rooms anymore, and this suite had been empty for weeks. I set down my tools, telling myself it was probably just lingering from years ago. Still, my hands trembled slightly as I pulled out the replacement bulb. I climbed the small step ladder and unscrewed the faulty light. That's when I heard it. A low laugh, deep, raspy, and far too close. I froze on the ladder, holding the bulb halfway out of the socket. My first thought was that another worker had come in, maybe trying to mess with me. "Hello?" I called, my voice sounding much smaller than I intended. No answer. Only silence. I tried to brush it off. The hotel has dozens of strange creaks and echoes. Maybe it was the pipes. I forced myself to finish screwing in the new bulb, but when the light flickered on, I nearly dropped it. Across the room, in the mirror that stretched above the dresser, I saw a man. He was standing right behind me, grinning. I spun around so fast I almost fell from the ladder. The room was empty. My breath came in sharp, shallow bursts. I turned back to the mirror and he was still there, leaning casually against the wall, wearing what looked like an old-fashioned suit, the kind you'd see in the 1920s. His hair was slicked back and a cigar glowed faintly between his fingers. His grin widened and I swear I could hear the faint crackle of burning tobacco. I stumbled backward, tools clattering to the carpet. The man didn't move toward me, he didn't need to. He just stared, smoke curling around his face in the reflection, though the air in the room itself remained still. I forced myself to speak. "You're not real," I whispered, though my voice shook so badly I didn't believe it myself. He chuckled again, a sound that vibrated through the room, and then, slowly, he lifted his hand and tipped his hat toward me as if mocking a greeting. I bolted. I didn't bother picking up the tools or checking if the bulb was working. I raced down the hall, not stopping until I reached the service elevator. Even then, my hands shook so violently I almost couldn't press the button. The elevator doors finally opened and I stumbled inside, leaning against the wall as I tried to catch my breath. But it wasn't over. As the elevator descended, I caught movement in the reflective panel opposite me. My heart dropped. He was there, standing behind me again, faint but undeniable, his grin sharper, his eyes darker. I refused to turn around, terrified of what I might actually see in the flesh. When the doors opened, I shot out, nearly knocking over a guest who gave me a strange look. I didn't stop until I reached the main lobby, where the golden lights and the presence of other people finally felt like salvation. Later, when I told one of the older staff members what I'd seen, he just nodded knowingly. "You've met him," he said. "The cigar man." Apparently, I wasn't the first. Other staff had seen him in the mirrors, usually late at night, always with that same unsettling grin. Some guests even reported the smell of cigars in their rooms, though no smoke was ever found. Since then, I've refused to go back into that suite alone at night. I do my rounds with another worker or I find an excuse to send someone else. People can believe what they want, but I know what I saw. His presence was as real as the walls of that hotel, as undeniable as the cold sweat that still drenches me whenever I think about that night. The Roosevelt is beautiful, yes. It's a piece of Hollywood history. But after dark, it becomes something else entirely. Behind its glamorous facade, something lingers, watching through the mirrors, waiting in the shadows. And if you ever smell the faint curl of cigar smoke in an empty room, don't wait around. He might just be standing behind you, grinning in the glass, waiting for you to notice. I still work here, but the building feels different to me now. Every time I walk those halls, I can't shake the feeling of being followed. Sometimes, when the night is especially quiet, I hear that laugh again, low, mocking, carried on the silence. And every time I pass a mirror, I force myself to look straight ahead, praying I don't see that grinning figure waiting in the reflection. Because if I do, I'm not sure I'll be able to walk away this time. Sometimes I wonder if the Roosevelt's mirrors are more than just glass. If they're doorways, if that grin is a promise that he'll never leave. I still work here, yes, but I'll never see this hotel the same again. If you've made it this far, it means you felt the chill too. Don't forget to subscribe for more true ghost stories, because what you just heard is only one of many. And trust me, some of the next ones are even darker.